Assalamu alaikum, good afternoon listeners. It's me, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 coming back on Facebook Live. Today is Monday, the 25th of April 2022. The time is just 4 minutes to 3 in the afternoon in Birmingham, England. Let me share the video and we can start this program. Thank you very much. The program is to address the perceptions, the prejudice, the criminal, and to address or inform our ignorance on government allocations of land. The reason for this program is in reaction to the government recent government allocation of land to ministers. But not only that, that would be addressed, but it's addressed the comments that are trending on social media. And from my understanding, again, this is my perception, my understanding, and it's based on my facts or facts on the ground, based on my, which I am going to present here. I can see a lot of ignorance, and it's not an insult. That's why I say to try to inform the ignorance, to try to put something out there. Some people might agree or not, but at least there's an argument being put out there, or a point have been put out there. And that's why I encourage other Gambians to do the same thing. We have to, have a discussion. We have to be putting, not just to sit back and people to say things. Some of these people saying things that are not right, that are not true, are ignorant. But they meant well. It's not that they want to create something. But out of that ignorance, there are people who are prejudiced. Because of their ignorance, they are prejudiced. And they are targeting certain communities or targeting certain people, thinking that that's what they should do, in defense of what have happened, of what the government have done, is let's go and attack these people based on ignorance. Now, if we don't address this ignorance, what would it be? Because then if you don't address it, the genuine people who are ignorant, who doesn't know, would not know, might take that perception to be the right. And this is what creates problems in our society. That's why we need to educate each other. Government is not doing that. This is what civic education is about. But about prejudice, ignorance, and perceptions, I would definitely do a pre-series program on my own. But again, I am building a platform where I'll bring people to discuss these issues. I think we need an environment where progressive Gambians will sit and genuinely address these issues. Because why is it so? Because I saw a lot of young people who I know meant well, and they are holding on to some of these perceptions. They were not around when it happened, and there's no literature. There's been taught in schools. There's no literature. There's no program civic education on our TVs or anywhere else. What is happening is we are allowing people that speak to have a narrative which is very disturbing and which is dividing us further down. And governments like that. Unfortunately, our governments like this, us from it divided. Instead of us being together, coming together to discuss the realities of life and find solutions, no. They love us to be divided, and they can sit there and build a narrative and to stay as long as they think they can. This is what's been happening. That's why I said we need to address this. There's a lot of prejudice, intended prejudice, due to what they think, their low self-esteem. We have a lot of people with low self-esteem. Not only that they are ignorant, but due to they think that they have failed or they have not achieved, and because of due to their not achieving, it's because of a group of people, or it's because of an individual. Now what I have to do, anything that individual represents, I have to attack them, be their tribe, be their social class, be their regional, whatever it is, then I have to go for them, which is totally not fair. Again, we leave these people to have this perception and this view or this prejudice. We are creating a problem. But there's a criminal element here, and that is corruption. That is corruption. And that corruption needed to be addressed. And that corruption is huge. And the problem with this corruption is engineered from government nationally. That corruption there intentionally is played. Again, the failure of government doing something about it. Because government and their patrons are the biggest perpetrator of this corruption. And what it does is come down. From up, come down to the police officer at the traffic. Now, Gambians are crying out why our people are just dying in the traffic like this. And some would be blaming the police. Yes, the police have to be blamed. But are we blaming the right people? Or are we ignoring other people that needed to be held accountable? You see a truck loaded at the ports. There should be a safety supervision at the ports. Overloaded at the ports, or overloaded at Picton Street, or some other streets that Bond Road, or wherever they take their goods from. There's no regulations. There are no government health and safety regulations that supervise these things to make sure that drivers know their load. The people contracting drivers knows, the entire stakeholders would know what is what their responsibilities are, and they know the consequences of failing to abide by that. That directors, managing directors and directors will know that they can be charged for corporate manslaughter for these accidents to happen. We start from there, coming down. We don't expect the police officer. It's not an excuse. I say an excuse to be corrupt, but we have to be realistic here. A police officer that cannot feed them the family, breakfast or whatever it is, cannot even standing at under that hot sun, hungry and whatever it is. You expect that police officer to take the burden of everything else. The failure of the executive level, the cabinet level to do the policies, the failure of the other administrators, government mercenaries, the failure of the agencies to do everything else. You want that police officer to be the one to salvage these things under that shoulder. That's completely impossible. Now, how many checkpoints would that truck go through before it gets to Fufoni to cause an accident, or get to Sarakuna to cause an accident, or get to Badibu, or wherever to cause an accident? How many checkpoints? And you ask yourself, why did these vehicles leave go through all these checkpoints, not been the same? And I'll tell you another thing. We have seen from Watson, Gambia, a vehicle impounded by traffic police. Guess what? It takes one call for that person to be released. Who do you think give the command for the person to be released? That police officer. What do you think that traffic police officer, as determined as he is, next time that the similar situation arises, and he is given $1,000 or $500, what do you think is going to happen? Let us be real here. It's likely to take that $500 or $1,000. This is what corruption does. What about that person who is anonymous there somewhere in the hierarchy of the police? I don't know who the person is, but we know it's going to have to come from up. It's not from that. It's not a junior officer calling the traffic police to tell him release him. No. That's what the corruption does. And do we know how much revenue? I had this 2 months ago. I have this information about this. Not actually. Someone raised it again 2 months ago, said, look, it's out of hand. I had this information for months, that now they are coming to high-powered vehicles, are not paying tax. And remember, our trade minister tell us that it's good that vehicles are being docking in goods are docking in Senegal, or cargo docking in Senegal and coming through there. It's good for us. You see how much we're losing? That they are coming to K8. And he said, if you see the number of high-powered vehicles without number plates, or some of them would even prepare a number plate and go, just after, when they pass the Senegalese border, this is the standard number plate, and they drive through. Do we know how much revenue lost do we have in through there? Just that area. How many millions? Those millions could have gone to schools, hospitals. You see what we're talking about, and other things. But again, if you think that you can save money from there, put it to the hospitals, but the hospitals have the same problems. That from the ministry down, corruption is coming down to the nurses. And we have to blame the nurses for their attitude. We have to blame the nurses for everything else, as if they are not humans. If they are not humans, you think the burden of the entire failure of the health sector can be salvaged by the nurses? We don't understand that nurses have to be motivated. We don't understand nurses have to be managed. If you think a nurse can work in a toxic environment and be effective, we are kidding ourselves. That's why we have to address this corruption, this criminality. And we have to be very wary. People will come out and attack us, but should not stop us. Because of they believe that they have to support government, or they are supporting government. And next minute they will cry out, begging. And they didn't realize it's that government responsibility. That's why they are poor. That's why beggars. That's why people are dying. Yes, that bit, I know I've digressed into corruption, that this thing. Let's come back to the land issue. This prejudice and everything else. Why this prejudice? And I'll declare it here. I'll declare it here. My father was a landowner in 𝗑𝗏. We have series. But I'll tell you one thing. Not one land belongs to my father was given from an alcalde or government. My father was a businessman. And actually, not apart from the house we find ourselves, and that house, you'll be surprised, that was not even my father's, was passed on from a friend to my father when they were working together. Because that land was occupied by my father's friend, who was a businessman. He was the father of 𝗵𝗵𝗲, the former managing director of 𝗂𝗵𝗲 Insurance. He was working with my father. They were trading in 𝗑𝗏. That's why people that know our area see how that layout is. In those days, during the colonial period, that was the center for trade in 𝗑𝗏 going to the Combos. Where my father was, where our house is today, was not a residence. It was like an industrial park. Where we were was my father and Mr. 𝗍𝗍. I keep on forgetting the name. I'll get it. Babu 𝗍𝗍's father. I don't want to name. Keep mixing the names from one of the sons and him. We're there. They were stationed there. The next was a friend company, and the third one was a woman. Fatu. We call him. A lady from Sierra Leone. A businesswoman from Sierra Leone was the next. We had those were the importers. They have done bringing rice from importing rice from different places. Doing a lot of things. From there on, that's how we own our own forced property. That's where we were until that property was transferred. To my father. The opposite property, my father bought it from someone else. And the rest, that's how we acquired their properties. And the property in Fonyi, yes, was allocated, but it was again, our property in Fonyi too was a business premises in Fonyi Bondale. Obviously, it became his residence, but it was an entity for business. not what is the residence. Saying that, I have no relative or anybody I know that have been allocated land by government apart from those people that work within government and got their land through Social Security. And that's their pensions or where their contributions and this info. I have no conflict of this. Because what I'm going to say might be seen by these distractors as favorable or positive to the PPP people. No. People that know me, I have been, as I am today, always been an anti-establishment. I criticized the PPP. I as a child, even I mounted actions of demonstrating my whatever it was, being an ignorant or anything. I had my prejudice against PPP, and you should know how much prejudice I had against PPP. But I was lucky to be educated, because part of that prejudice is the environment I had. I was molded by young people who were very angry and have right to be angry. But it's not everything or not their entire narrative was true. Now, as a child, how do you think I take that? Can I get what is true or not? No, I just pick everything up and keep that anger. And I'll take anybody that works in government as PPP. I'll take anybody that works or anybody can subscribe to PPP as corrupt, immoral, or whatever it is. And again, even my elders that mold me, they don't even know better. Yes, they were in the process of education. Some of them were attending university, or some attended university, came back from Uppsala University, from 𝗂𝗏, most of them from 𝗂𝗏 in Yala, and so on in West Africa. They are radicals. Some of them were in their 6th form, 5th form, and so on. They were radicals. Some of them from the West Indies University came back, and others. But not entirely what they were telling me was true. And I can't tell the difference. And some of them don't know even the difference, because they had their own prejudices as well. And I'll give you an example. If I had, lately I had a very good close friendship with. And as we were talking, and this person, I perceived the person, then father, because I didn't even know the father, but because of the perception around PPP, and the father was not even PPP, but the perception of government. Perception of government or anything to do with government. And this is the parastatals or anything. Because the parastatals were worse actually. That everybody is corrupt, immoral, or whatever, or they got their positions through their families and so on. I perceive one, that father was a Banjulian. Did I get it wrong? Completely wrong. The father technically have nothing to do with Banjul apart from being raised in Banjul. The father is from Kawur. One. The other perception, I thought that the father got to where he was because of his connection with Banjulians. Wrong. I did not know that as early as the early 80s, the father had an engineering degree. The father has his master's in business. Look, today, even today's world, to achieve. And still, the father was not even, yes, the father was head of the wherever he was. I don't even know actually what his job was. I didn't even know the father was an engineer, but I had a prejudice against him. I had a prejudice against the father and said all of them. I did not know that the gentleman's mother, the father's wife, first wife, was actually with all the pompous or the perception of wealth or whatever they achieved. Wherever they lived in Fajara or wherever they lived. The mother was selling food at the schools. The mother have to wake up early in the morning to cook. To cook, not to have maids. Probably have one maid to help in the household, but to take part in the cooking. To cook, to take the food, when his husband was probably not very far from the position of managing director, to go to the schools, to sell from 11 o'clock to about 3 o'clock, come back again, go to the market. The woman was doing that. Do you know what I felt after knowing that fact? How I felt, how bad I felt that I have for a lifetime. And I tell you, and that's not long ago, it changed a lot in how I see things. And in fact, made me to understand some of the things I know, I should have known around me. You see, we educate ourselves in many ways, but civic education will help from government and agencies and what we do within ourselves. That's why I'm passionate in what I do, because I know that impact. I know that impact. Look, our environment, that's what fuels this prejudice. That's why we have to be proactive in trying to educate each other, especially the youths, because of the amount of youths I heard. And you know, there are some of us who knew better, but we are silent and letting these youths just walk with this. Why should we let them walk in this minefield when we could have helped them and mapped a way out for them, to educate them to find out? That was one prejudice. And I did not know, in fact, after everything that person was doing, in the 80s, that gentleman, his father, was offered a job in Oman, the Arab things took, as an engineer. When he graduated as an engineer, had his master's, to go and run a company. No, he loved the Gambia, and he think that he owes it to Gambia, that educate him to come back, because he's from a poor family in Kabul, to educate to this thing. And obviously, for that person, socially mobility created to get there, he went and bought a house where he aspired to be. Now people like us, we don't know better. We said, oh, he's just the bunch of the other corrupt. And I tell you, it educated me to understand a lot. It educated me to understand a lot more of what have transpired. That's why I'm here to discuss this. And again, I will point to where the corruption was heightened, where criminality was within the PPP. But we have to even give PPP the credit and to explain again the importance of this discussion. In fact, to explain again what led PPP to go down the route they did, and that's where we are still. The corruption came in, and people were divided, started to be divided. Accountability was not available. If anybody speaks, he will be labeled. Oh, he's a Mandinka sympathizer, or he's a Mandinka. He's a Wolof sympathizer, he's a Banjul Mafia sympathizer. Or if the person genuinely criticized the establishment itself, no, he's a failure. Yeah, he's a radical failure, he's a Marxist, he's a Leninist. Yes, I'll tell you, these things used to go on in the Gambia. He's Marxist, he's Leninist, he's poor, he's from a poor family. That's why he is this thing, he have grudge. We said everything. Some of those things are true to a level to different people. But it was not we were not constructing these criticisms properly. There was no forums that we can discuss this. Create these forums to discuss this. That's why I said I want to take this further, to create that, try and create that forum, to bring our Gambians together. We have a forum that we discuss this. These things happen. But that's the lack of, what that means, lack of accountability. There is no mechanism of accountability. Again, when this 996 million came up, when that problem was happening, people like us were challenging it, but we didn't have the entire, and we don't have expertise. I'm not an accountant. I am nothing close to an accountant. The only figures I know is what I expect to come to me. I didn't bother to figures that I don't expect to come to me. I know my salary, I know my income, I know my projected incomes and other things I can do and other things I can account for. But I cannot go to big amount of government to account for. No. But we were attacking things we understand. At least highlighting things, actually. Highlighting things that we should understand. But people who have more capacity were not engaged into this. And they know better. They don't come into forum. They don't create a forum. We don't create a forum. That's not count. But not only that too, the institutions mandated, the National Assembly mandated. We are all participants who look in different ways or even not competent. Some of this is not deliberate, not competent. That's why again we see our failures. And other people that, I mean, this is the lack of accountability. And the lack of accountability continued. And that lack of accountability brings in what? Complacency. People are complacent and just corruption grows. I do it, yeah, that's what the norm is. It becomes a system. If you are a managing director, you're expected to have this. If you are a director, you're expected to have this, regardless of how you have it. If you are this, that's what you expect. And people, what that means, people become, entitled. Entitlement built up in society, and poverty continued, and we ignore. And people started to gravitate to these people immoral and corrupt and what this thing, and the moral and others are saying as Bugudara. You start, and people are not respected for their values. People are respected for what they have accumulated. That Jaliba would not come and sing, or any griot for that matter would not talk about anybody else because of their moral virtues. But they talk about them because of the wealth. That's why every season there's a new patron. Every season there's a new patron. That patron has been found out he lost his so-called wealth. Every season is a patron. As a society and our mindsets and wherever we are started to gravitate towards those people. And there's no accountability continue. And it goes on, bam, one day. Because democracy means accountability. That's why we create democracy with separations of power and everything else. Rule of law and so on. And all those things. And because that corruption goes, the police go. And we expect the police to be this. No. Even the way they appointed the IG and everything else is measured through to who would allow us. Who will work with us. You have to be part of us. There's no incentive to do good. Even Jawara became a victim. Now he thinks he's the Alpha and the Omega and everything else. Apart from him, nobody else can take up Gambia. And there's no incentive for him to resign or retire. You see, it went on. That's why, again, I have to highlight this. We have to keep on accountability. We have to keep on, but we have to try to educate ourselves more. We have to organize more and see it work for what it is. And these distractors will still be there. But let's come on again. Why do I say understanding the APRC, understanding the PPP? Part of my education was when I came to the United Kingdom. I was fortunate to work with. They are not clandestine, I'll tell you. But what they do end up to be clandestine in other countries. There are companies associated with other companies. Let's say there are outfits. We call them outfits. And this outfit I was working with was associated to a law firm. And one of the biggest law firms, intellectual property law firms in this country, owned by 3 brothers. And this outfit was an intelligence outfit. Most of their intelligence here was, that's why, because about every other thing. That's why I first saw letters being written for £5,000. Their top lawyers would write letters for corporation for £5,000. And through, by accident, walking in the building, low paid, get into a conversation with someone I thought was just a lawyer, and he invited me out. And the conversation was triggered by him, saw me in several different occasions reading books, and different books for that matter, range of books, for he even observing. And one day he just turned around and come to my desk and said, may I ask? And started the conversation to find out my background. He said, because, not normally to see this. And I explained my background. And he said, look, let's have a drink afterwards. We went and had a drink. And he opened my eye. I said, yeah, that's my background. I was in the army, I did this, I did that. I was special forces, this is what I do now. But there's an outfit part of our company that I think they might need your expertise in certain areas, and I'll link you to these people, and linked. Then from there on, God have it, and this is what I always prayed for, to be more knowledgeable about things. And for different reasons, I am not the person that goes into classrooms because I have a disability. Classroom is not designed for me. But God just opens these avenues, just as meeting people, they educate me and I take it from there. That's enough for me. Education is not to make wealth in that way for me. I can make wealth. I've got enough common sense to make wealth if I want to. But I'm not motivated. And through this work and whatever they do and whatever we do and what they need of us, I was not there for the money. Yeah, it was contract and basis or whatever it is. It was the education that really pushed me, and it was very good money too. But it was not that. And I was motivated. I understand how government works. I understand how institutions work. I understand how to, because some of what they do is to undermine governments. What they do to undermine institutions. What they do to investigate, to know. What they do to this, what they do to that. To the extent of making recommendations of strategies to dislodge governments. Yes, I sat on those tables. And I have seen them, it worked. I learned from all that. And this still helped me. Now, in fact, what it did was, it opened my eye to understand, okay, now things I saw when I was a kid growing up, this is what it is. And that word is social mobility. You see, one of the things they do, obviously, when they do their good work, I call their good work where they advise companies. A company is coming in part of Africa, and that company want to be sustainable. The company need to invest in there, that they need an assessment. And this outfit will do an assessment for them. Assessment is the risk assessment to see every other thing, the political and every stability of the country and all other things. And in fact, down to the community they're going to operate in, how these things affect them. Because these things are important for their insurance. These things are important for their investment on everything else. And part of those recommendations would be how to create social mobility within communities and all those kind of things and so on. In order to able to sustain their operations and so on, how to bring in locals into the systems and all those kind of things. These are the good things they do, but there are the other bad things they do. But and again, these good things, in fact, it's just small. These companies are coming to take billions out just to throw thousands in. But what does we do? Now, what actually I understand from all my experience, this was actually PPP had most of it right. But what went wrong? Lack of accountability, corruption just dipped in. And that's where I'm going to go to. Social mobility and failure of the decentralization. Social mobility, I'll come to, and this decentralization was, the development strategy we had was all centered in the urban area. Understanding this, after the United Kingdom have a zonalization. Like in those days, the Midlands was the car industry. The car industry was Midlands. Then every company, all the companies that will end up building the Leland vehicles or rover vehicles or everything was within the West Midlands. You have the East Midlands was for aviation and train. automotive, train automotive, and so on. You see, different, they zonalize it. You go to the up north where the farming, you have the textiles, and you can see why the migration patterns, I mean, who settles where, can tell you. You see, and you can tell again the infrastructure in the Midlands and the East Midlands and others. For example, the canal networks for transportation. You see, what this does is give you an education that you never had. I'd never had development studies or anything education. But through getting into working with these people, they teach you this. This is called this. This is what they do. Now, obviously, if strategically you wanted to do something, how do you do it? You can sabotage this. Once this is out, this is out. This is out. But social mobility is important. Decentralization is important. Then that's what it is. And you know, at latter part, what happened in the United Kingdom is because of some shocks that happen, the rise of China and others, they have to lose certain things, but they need to reprioritize and to create other powerhouses to generate wealth that will take up the nation. I mean, areas that they need to concentrate, areas they need to invest, and that is again decentralizations. You know, after they went on, the car manufacturing went on from the Midlands, and now small automotive started to be, built in the Sunderlands, by the docks of the East London dock, we call Dagenham docks and others. You have Vauxhall, Rovers, Vauxhall and other vehicles being built, decentralized. But the failure of the PPP was that everything was to take it from the hinterlands to the urban area. Nothing was created in the hinterlands, I mean in the provinces, to build a value chain. Groundnut trade. And if you look at it, then every settlement that was along the River Gambia, Bondali, Tenda, Bintang, Kaur, Kuntawur, and go on, was vibrant because of the groundnut trade. You see, we centered on the groundnut trade, and the groundnut trade was all get the urban rural population to farm the land and do the labor and labor it to the boats or whatever you call them, dinghies or whatever you call them, and transport it to Banjul in Saro and be processed or be shipped to there. Nothing else was done with the groundnut. And what is happening is, if you have to build your capacity, you have to move away from the rural areas and come to Banjul or come with the Combo area to develop. Even Combo, actually even Gunjur. People from Gunjur used to come and live in Banjul because that was the only way, or live around Bakau. That's the only way they can access some of these things. Lack of decentralization. You know, if we had decentralized at that time, at the same time of doing, but PPP had something right, was social mobility, especially at the beginning. Social mobility means to give, provide according to your resources, things that would, help people to move from poverty, out of poverty, on. And what happens is, as these families move out of poverty, they are creating a value chain for, in that sense. Because when they become affluent, they have wealth, or whatever disposable income, they build more money, disposable income, they will spend more. And spending more would help the other part of the microeconomic development. Be shops, be people doing small businesses, women trading in the markets, and everything else will help. You know, that's another aspect of development. And they had this right, to a level. But it could become distorted. This is which I am going to touch on. Because why this? As I said, the word Fajara. Fajara is seen as negative. And I tell you, Fajara is positive for me. If you know the facts, and that facts I want to share. K-point is seen as negative. K-point is positive for me, if you know the facts. Then we will look at the other things happen after Fajara and K-point. The coming of social security. Social security is positive for all of us, I think. But, and you can see the problem here. Why even social security end up having problems. Land, the cost of land. They cannot now just produce cheap. And this is by time too. I am going to bring other social factors that have cost us land, to appreciate that much. Which is not realistic, the distortion of markets. I'll present that as well. Now, why Fajara is progressive for me now? I said then Fajara was not progressive. I swear to Allah, this Christmas, this Ramadan, the amount of hate that was put on kids. We used to go in to steal. People, after this was my experience, and I'll tell you, I know that I have this discussion with people I was with, and some have it, some did not, and some did not even have it until I brought it onto them why we were doing this. Some did even forget that this is what we were doing. Yeah, they know that we were going to someone's house to steal oranges or whatever they have. But one thing I remember, we used to see it as taking something that is ours, because these people stole it from us. Now, contrary what I know, I felt bad. But this exposed the danger in lack of education, the danger of people being separated, people being separated, divided, seeing this as this. But Fajara was part of social mobility. 𝗂𝗵𝗲 was part of social mobility, which I'm going to explain, and other things. Like Fajara, I have to explain Fajara for people who don't understand Fajara, and most people that think they know Fajara. I have spoken to people that live in Fajara, they don't know Fajara, because they found themselves in Fajara. Fajara was before our eyes. I'm that old, I'll tell you. Fajara was from our eyes. The Newtown Road was non-existent. The only road that was existent was the Atlantic Road that goes to MRC, turn around to the water BOC water this thing. Even it stops, the road stops there. All the other Fajara Hotel was not existent, and this is the time I'm telling you. This was the early 70s, before Fajara comes in and others could follow. Sunwin Hotel was not existent. All those hotels were not existent. It was Bakau was just a small village out of everything. Bakau stops at the what we call now 𝗬𝗵𝗲 Road. 𝗬𝗵𝗲 Road is the road that runs from the around the Independence Stadium. You know, from mile 7. Actually, let's say from mile 7. People to understand, from mile 7, or to say the steaming corner, coming down to I know people are wondering why I'm calling it steaming corner. It's called steaming corner, not sitting corner. That history is a lie. I mean, it came down Radio Gambia, down to what we call PWD and on. PWD was there, and now again social mobility. PWD brought a lot of people in Bakau, but the other thing that expanded social mobility was the presence of the colonials masters. Then the hotel came in and others came in. You see, that's how development was happening. Now Bakau was a small village. When you have Bakau itself, what we call the negative word Bakau Dinko Kono, but Bakau Wasulung, Bakau itself, the Bakau settlement itself. Kachirkali was just a bush where we did everything else. Apart from the crocodile pool, there was nothing there in the early 70s. Nothing, absolutely. Then you have where we are, 𝗁𝗵𝗲. When my father moved from Bakau Wasulung, yeah, as a kid, he grew up in Bakau Wasulung as a young man, and moved into Bakau 𝗁𝗵𝗲. And that's why Bakau 𝗁𝗵𝗲 is that cosmopolitan, because many people came from different areas to settle in Bakau. But you will hardly find someone from Bakau Wasulung who have a property in Bakau 𝗁𝗵𝗲. Because you see, people, we have to understand generations. For them, what they had was enough. They don't see the possibilities of the village expanding. No. 𝗂𝗵𝗲, nobody lived in 𝗂𝗵𝗲. 𝗂𝗵𝗲 was mainly the Tubabs, the colonial administrators, let's call it colonial administrators. I'm telling you, before the hotels. The rest was the agricultural department that was actually a part of an infrastructure of the British during the Second World War. The British used agricultural department, that area, as to keep their archives. When the United Kingdom was bombed, London was bombed, Kew Garden was targeted. Kew Gardens is where, again, the story of the Botanic Garden. Kew Garden, Botanic Garden. You see the similarities, and actually it has something. Kew Garden, which is in the suburbs of London, was where the archives, Kew Archives, where the archives where public records and most of them, these things were kept. And the Nazis were targeting these areas. What did they do? They fabricated, quickly built certain these things in that area of Bakau. Why that area of Bakau is strategic? Because the landing field was in 𝗂𝗧. The air landing field was in 𝗂𝗧. Not only that, too, part of Denton Bridge was used for sea landing, the flight seaplanes. Now it's easy to bring their stuff in there and evacuate it and keep it in a densely, the most densely then was Cape Point. That's how that agriculture department came about. And after the Second World War, it was transferred to the government of the Gambia, which used it as an agricultural department to nurseries, and that place they turned it to a botanic garden. That's how the botanic garden came about. My understanding of the history, I mean, there might be a perception why why the agricultural things, but I'll tell you, this is what it's been used and transferred. And why I have that perception is where the archives were kept was at the botanic garden of Kew Gardens in the United Kingdom. Probably if I hadn't been into the United Kingdom, I don't know that. I don't know the Kew Garden. But I knew, because my father, Second World War, was stationed. And in fact, part of those people used in securing those archives in Cape Point. My father did not travel to the Second World War because my father is very little person, and they needed people who are more distant to work. But he was stationed. He was a soldier. He stationed there. He was stationed there, and he worked there. And they know what they have kept there. And there are other artifacts. There are all the artifacts around there to tell you. And that's people in Bakau or people who've gone to Bakau can see the concrete, these things built. That's where the canoes were mounted to defend the positions in case the war gets there. Now, Bakau, Cape Point, that's all it was. Apart from, you see the beach area of first, starting from Cape Point. Fajara was, I said the Hotel Sunwin was not there. So the last compound we played in there. You come down a bit, you have the French consul. The French consulate was living there. Again, there was a good reason the French consulate to live there. And you have what we call French consul, and the next one was, I don't know the family where they come from, where the white people, we call it Edgar. I think the father was called Edgar, but Edgar, all the people, my generation in Bakau know, or older than me know Edgar, and probably people older than me might know what nationality he was. But we played with the children at Edgar. This was early 70s. We played with them. And one thing we do in Bakau is when you swim, to prove your your skills, you have to swim to the point when it's already full tide, to see Edgar or Edgar first, then move further down, then able to see French consul. And if you can see Edgar, you have to able to dive down to dip in and pick the sand in your hands to prove that you have the skills. And some of our friends died in doing that. Or you have to go to French consul to do that again. If you pass Edgar, you have to go and prove yourself French consul. If you stay at Edgar, I'm able to do it in French consul, I'm the winner. But again, we added what we call Fajara, MRC. You go further in sea, you will be able to see the MRC. This is my environment I grew in. Now, that's all of Cape Point was those houses coming down, And everything else, the Botanic Garden, and part of the Botanic Garden, there were houses, there were colonial houses, and you call what we call government house. That was we call the Second State House, where the community center was, Second State House. And the other properties, every property, so the property and Nemban and others, and the church were owned by colonial. And later they pass it on to government. That's how it went to depot and go to MRC. And MRC continued to where the British consulate is now, going down where all government property, colonial properties later become government property. And to the tank. To the tank, that was it. Then later you have the American residence, American embassy residence after the tank, after the things out the tank. Then because where the American residence is, it was a big bush there, but there was on top of that hill two government houses that lead to where the vice president residence is. Casuarina, I think in fact the word Casuarina came from the garden that was there. That nightclub they call Casuarina came from that garden. This is what Fajara was in the 70s. Then, the first people that settled in Fajara, and again the history of Fajara, as we know, was that the area Fajara, a guy 𝗂𝗵𝗲 𝗣𝗿𝗂𝗍𝗂 was living there, a lone person that they thought he was not mentally this thing, whatever. But I was told by people that know that he used to come from there to the Bakau to do his stuff and go back. He never troubled anybody or but not. But even my elder sisters or siblings tell me that when they see him, they run, because he was known as the madman who lived in the bush. He was living alone. That side. And the other side, by the stadium, there was the guy called Gorgui Ndiaye. Gorgui Ndiaye too was a Senegalese that who just live in seclusion like that. These people might have been spiritual people, but we thought that because of they live in those areas, they are mad. That's how isolated that place was around the stadium area. That Gorgui Ndiaye was the person that moved. You see where the big tree, the taba, what do we call taba or taba? This taba tree, the big tree at towards the stadium, where the mosque is today, called Bassirou Diawa Mosque. It was Gorgui Ndiaye who started praying there. Gorgui Ndiaye who created like a kind of a praying area and used to pray alone. Gorgui Ndiaye will only not pray there when it's Friday. He will come to Bakau and pray. And if he goes to Bakau, there was a route. We remember as a kid, and there were compounds that Gorgui Ndiaye would stop and exchange pleasantry or whatever it is, and go this in there. And Gorgui Ndiaye would retreat again alone. I've never witnessed of any person with Gorgui Ndiaye, or apart from those who would be walking, because most of the time then people walk to Banjul, people walk for different places. When they come there, they settle or pray with him or something like that. That's how we do. He was not mad or anything. I think he was just heavily spiritual, who wanted to live his own existence for any reason. That's where Gorgui Ndiaye was. Gorgui Ndiaye was until Bassirou Diawa, he passed away anyway. And Bassirou Diawa bought that property and decided and saw how it became a congregation and it became a mosque. Now, the Fajara we talk about started where? The land, most of that was occupied in Fajara, was not government allocated. It was allocated by the Alcalo of Bakau. Alcalos of Bakau. Now, where it started again, you see, even Bakau Sanchaba, you know, I said, when, our compound was actually the edge of Bakau Sanchaba. It was not even before Bakau Sanchaba, after our compound, it was bushes. Later it developed. I can vividly remember some of the compounds, how they developed in my presence. Just imagine my people that know my, they know that it's the center. Where I live in Bakau Sanchaba is where we call Podium is. It's the center now. But that was this edge of Bakau. Anything else was big gardens and so on. That's why you have the Eben Thomas, these things, and on other big compounds that were gardens. That's where the cinema was. They were the IOGT, That compound, that's where we have cinema printing. Cinema printing, until when the cinema printing was moved from that this thing, I can remember the day, the chairs, I was part of the kids that jumped on the truck to transport that to the new cinema where it is now called Cinema 𝗬𝗂𝗍𝗂𝗧. That people don't know about, think that Cinema 𝗬𝗂𝗍𝗂𝗧 because that place is 𝗬𝗂𝗍. No, that's the 𝗬𝗵𝗲. Where the cinema was around that area, that's what's your 𝗧𝗵𝗲 𝗣𝗵𝗲. It was a car park. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 𝗣𝗵𝗲. That garage was moved to where Ndemban is now. That's where the new garage is. What Baka was, that's 𝗧𝗵𝗲 𝗣𝗵𝗲. That's the suburb. It was a suburb. 𝗬𝗵𝗲 was a suburb. Now, if you look at that, now to transform this, we have to understand then wealth. How many people were earning? Colonial government finished. Now new government start. How many people were earning? And that's why most of the people earning big in government and earning big were people who were first educated and become the Akos and Christians. And mainly Akos, not all Christians, but mainly Ako people. They were administrators. They were they were the people that occupy managing directors and positions like that. Now the beach side was occupied by still, because even in the early districts there still we have someone called John Cluse. John Cluse was still head of field force, and you have other people, administrators still in the Gambia. Now they live along the beach side, beach area. Those properties, as I said, were owned by the colonies and turned to government. Now, in moving to those areas, this mostly Ako people or Christians that were educated, some became doctors in the 70s, Dr. Palmer, Dr. Peters, Linda Peters, and others came, and because their similarity of culture or their Western being exposed, they wanted to live in secluded areas. And they went to the Alcalo, and Alcalo demarcated. In those days, they'll tell you, the Alcalo will tell you just or take as much as you want. The Alcalos want people to come, because that's how they make their rates. The more rates they pay, the more the commission they have from the state. They give them now. Now, you see, the first side of social mobility was where the CFRO is in Bakau was a petrol station. Petrol station owned by the company that I said, the French company that was next to our house, owned the CFRO, that property, and later it becomes CFRO, that's they built the supermarket. Now, the compound next to that was Mr. 𝗳𝗵𝗲. I'm not sure whether 𝗵𝗲, I think it's a Christian, I'm not even sure, but it's so. I mean, this is where it's 𝗵𝗲, then you have 𝗬𝗵𝗲𝗃. That 𝗬𝗵𝗃 came after. But then you have the compound after was Mr. Ndir was an inspector. But when Mr. Ndir had that compound, he was a sergeant. That place was demarcated. And you have Mas Jara on the other side, and you have other Mahoney on the other side, and others. Those places were first demarcated by government and given to servicemen and civil servants. It was not a sought after area. And certain things there are, okay, they are confidential because it's between my father and people that live in that area. I don't want to talk about that. That's what I tell you that. I know it was not sought after area. And there was fear that that area still got jinns. And it was my father who was kind of an uncle, taken as an uncle, because the Mr. Jara's mother and Mr. Ndir's mother were all Fullers, and they take my father as a brother. And my father was like an uncle to Mr. Jara and Mr. Ndir. And he was the one who reassured them, look, there's nothing like jinns around here. And kind of encourage them that you have to try and develop these places. This is, and obviously people like Mahoney doesn't have that because of his former different background. That's how they develop. And there was, I forgot who owns where the NTC was before Mr. Tal came in there. Then Mr. Tal bought the property from that thing and lived there. The rest was agriculture and the depot. And then Bakau School. And then you have the teachers' quarters. Apart from that, there was nothing in that area. The first demarcation, government demarcation. Then the demarcation that happened was Alcalo demarcations. That was the first Fajara. That was, you see, that Fajara is where after depot, then you start the Peters, Mahoney's, Landry's, and others to the edge of where we have the Bakau Health Center. And the Bakau Health Center, there are compounds around there where were inhabited by people that were living there, working for the colonials during the Second World War. But the minute the work finished, they just abandoned the place, left it, and came back to inside Bakau. One of them, that was my uncle. My uncle, who was called 𝗏𝗏 𝗏𝗏, because of he was one of the few that lived in Fajara. He was working, they call them rapas, as maids in those places. But that compound now is a multi-billion. But when he left there, it was supposed he left it. And later it became a government demarcated area. He never put claim on it. Now, these people who acquire these things, acquire them from the Alcalo. And I'll tell you, be it Peters, Landry, all these people became part of our community. People that know. As a child, I remember in Ndamban. Ndamban is the big baobab tree at Bakau Beach. Bakau Beach. They used to, we have people that sit down there, to chat, like a bantaba. Ndamban, like the breeze and it. You have the likes of, the lives of this historian, God would, hello, kill me. Yeah, Mr. Landry Peters and all these intellectuals then, the creme of cremes, used to come. And I think one of them wrote a book on Ndamban or Kachi, they used to come there. They come. They were not like elites that live, no. They come to Bakau Market. And it was social mobility. They're spending their money in Bakau Market. They used to come to the Ndamban, this thing where kids like me, that who have interest in eavesdropping in a lot of conversation. Whilst we do our other things, swimming, coming back. God, what's this guy's name? He have to come to me. He was another Christian elder. God. He made that, God, he used to make the program. He was the teacher, art teacher in St. Joseph's. I don't know how I forget this name. It will come to me. Pardo Costa and others, they all congregate there. And the Pardo Costa will tell of history, how he came to Bakau, the history of Ndar, history of how things are coming up. Peters and others, they speak the perfect language. And I remember that. And I remember, in fact, going to Katikali again, I have seen these people, dignitaries, they don't even call them, they see them there. They know many compounds in Bakau they go to. They were part of us. They did not keep themselves away. I remember them coming to the Alcalos, this thing like ritual, as a respect, the imams of Bakau, to greet them and things like that. They were part of us. And do you know what? They paid for scholarship to a lot of kids in Bakau. Not only that, I know of kids from Bakau that were brought up in those households. Some were going daily to study in their houses. And some were, in fact, lodge. Some were even lodge. The 𝗏𝗵𝗲 𝗍𝗏 on Facebook will tell you this. One of his cousins, I think is or a brother, was lodged in one of the, I'm not sure it was Dr. Pama or Mahoney, one of the doctors around there. He was brought up there. He was a Fuller boy. But later he was like an Akupikid. You see, this is how it started. It was kind of associated. These people obviously were not given properties by government, but they graduated, they have these things, they could have lived here, they could have gone and served other places. They came back to Gambia to be doctors and others, they lived there. Then, the first big chunk of demarcation of Bakau happened, and again, this was late 70s. If look, don't quote me this thing. This is from my memory. It's a memory. It's not something written down anyway. But I think it's the late 70s. This was what we call today South. I don't know why it's South. It has to be north of Bakau, but probably Fajara South, because it's south of Fajara. Yeah, probably it's south, but Fajara South. This is again the road. You see, road infrastructure is very important. The road built from the 𝗬𝗵𝗲 going towards Fajara 𝗬𝗵𝗲 Road. It's called 𝗬𝗵𝗲 Road now. That was called the Bakau Newtown Road. That Bakau Newtown Road was, we used to play football there. That Bakau Newtown Road was built in the late 70s. Before that, most of Newtown was gardens. Most of Newtown was gardens. And few families moved from Bakau. This was the only time that some of my people within Bakau have seen the need to get out to this thing. There's no road, but Bakau started to be congested a bit. Some of my uncles who were living in my father's property, and actually from encouragement from my father, because my father was an entrepreneur. Look, you guys need to. And some of them would say, no, I don't need a house, I don't need a property, I don't need a property. Because, look, technically everybody was living free of, you just live free. There's nothing like wealth. But some of these people took it, that their family was getting big. Now they cannot fit in silent cabinet. Now they have to go and start to build their mud houses, whatever they can build. And some of them were not even mud houses, they were, these huts. And that's why you can see Newtown is kind of a bit organized. And mainly people that live in Newtown was allocated to them, to Alcalo. But this time again, because we still have the quality of colonial governance, the physical planning was involved. That's why you see Newtown was kind of a Soviet, and helped demarcate. But the Alcalo and the Bakau, this thing, have a bigger say in the distribution or allocation of that land. But that again did not go to the stadium. The stadium was still a bush and other farms. Farms. I remember helping some of our people that live with us to farm in there. Farms. Now Newtown was built in that way, but late 70s, around that time, that demarcation led to government allocations of a big chunk. And again, that's social mobility. Social mobility, what it means, that give facilities, education, housing, then create an enabling environment where government investment will happen, to help people to find jobs, or jobs will be created. That's what social mobility. Then Newtown South. Newtown South, which is now termed technically Fajara. Fajara South. Fajara South was demarcated. And I will tell you, and this is going to be compare what is happening now. The demarcation and allocation was done right, was done with a matrix. Servicemen were given. That's why you find today most of service family live around that area. Most of service family that hold onto the land live around that area. To the rank of couple. Couple, not the hierarchy. I think at that time, yes, I know some people after became, by the late 80s, they became senior, they became inspectors, but some of them were sergeant when they were given that land. The time of the late 80s, they became inspectors. Some of them were couples. By the time of the late 80s, they became sergeant. Some of them, I think probably 1 or 2 was an inspector. Or that level. And that included Ndaunjai. Because Ndaunjai was in the field force then. Ndaunjai and others, a lot of that demarcation of these things were all demarcated, given from corporal ranks to inspector. Just like the experiment they started in Bakau, giving the sergeants, mass jaras, the orders around the Bakau police station. That was logical, strategic. This was demarcated. Then you have all those field force, most of them who were not educated, but they dedicate their service, they were loyal to the state and everything else. not the thing, and they did their job well, they were allocated. It was not about ministers being allocated there or not. That time, no, I don't know of any minister living in South or own a property in South. But what happened is, when the road got built, the property started to appreciate. And some of these servicemen could not, or did not belong to still they were just serving in Bakau barracks. They came from Jambur, they came from Gunjur, they came from other settlements. They thought it was a thing that, let's sell. They sold. And who bought? The middle businessmen and others that have little. They did not sell much, but that then it was much, probably $2,000, $3,000, probably. And it was much. Cement was 25 bottles or something like that, or less probably. They sold. For them it was that, and they go and build their houses in Gunjur or Burfood, in Sanyang, or wherever settlement they came from. Some people came from North Bank. Most service district came from the North Bank. Some went back to Jinak and other areas. But some decided, look, this is where I have my family in Bakau barracks. Now I am retiring, I have to leave, and this was it. Now you cannot expect servicemen to be provided accommodation in Bakau barracks until their retirement, and they are not paid much, and you want to throw them out with their families. No, a responsible government would demarcate land, and in fact probably do more. But again, we have to appreciate government don't have that much then. This was a government that had to borrow money from Freetown and support to sustain. Go and read Andrew Scamar's book, how they manage the resources then. But later it changed. But this was Newtown. I have my uncles, I have friends of my father's and others that have properties there. And some of them maintain their property, others sold their properties. That's how from, you know where, I think the Nigerian embassy is still there, I don't know. Bakau Newtown, starting there on to go. That's how the demarcation went on. And somewhere, there are certain areas they give to some administrators. That's the beginning. You see, from where should the Nigerian embassy be? I think the owner of the Nigerian embassy was even a civil servant who happened to even get greater and serve in the international community, now build that embassy. You see, social mobility. This was opportunity given to people who were at the bottom of the ladder to social mobility. And when they make wealth, everybody is happy. There's nothing wrong in making wealth the right way. And government should structure, make an enabling environment for citizens to meet their potentials. This is what was happening in the beginning of the PPP. Then Fajara South became that. That's how Fajara South became. And some people, you know, Lawyer Silla, Usman Silla, was a police officer. Had a property there. A lot of these people today, you see big lawyers and all, they were police officers. Ndaunjai and others. Ndaunjai was a inspector, 7th Arctic was sergeant. When he had this property, that's where his parents live now. And others. I can name a lot of people that have properties in there. Majority will. But some sold. That's why you find other private owners. A younger brother of a friend of mine, I call it a younger brother. In fact, he just inherited his grandfather's property, which was still a garden, and with just a small house in it. He inherited, he's in the diaspora here now, he's building stores in there. And that was his grandfather who served the Second World War and served the depot. Inherited it, and other people inherited. That's how Bakau Newtown came about. Fajara South. Now, when Fajara South happened, MRC still have the majority of that land there. I'll come to that. Before that, then you have the next layer of Fajara. Next layer of Fajara was given to administrators again. You servicemen have the south, and further to the middle, or whatever you call it, the area that comes down to the road, to Kayaba Avenue Road, that area, spreading the other side of Fajara. Now, this is done, differentiate Fajara from pipeline. If you go further down there, that's where pipeline is. That was Bakau Kunku. And Bakau Kunku too, will come to that. Then that's how, and most of these people too, the time they were given the properties, They were not even directors. Gambia has to understand, we were a small population. It's only few people that will be called director. It's not like today you have 2 permanent secretaries. It's 1 permanent secretary, 1 director. And 1 director will serve a lifetime. It's not like today he's a director, he's sacked. No. No. There was security in their jobs. Then when you have the permanent secretary, you have a deputy permanent secretary, you have director of technical service, director of this, director of this. Probably three directors in the ministry. Then the rest. How many people are there to call for that? And these people were allocated land, and some were even not to the point of this, the time they were allocated land. This is interesting to know. Because the land was allocated, doesn't mean that they allocated land, they have the money to build, no. Now they have to find ways to build that land and what they can build in that land. And again, another education I had, people like 𝗬𝗵𝗲. 𝗬𝗵𝗲 was working for already. I don't think I'm not sure he even worked for government, but if he had worked for government for such time, because all the time we know 𝗬𝗵𝗲 was at the, how to call it, what, international civil servant, or working for international an organization, West Africa Organization Council. He was this, and the wife was already a senior teacher at Gambia High School or something like that. And these people again, they had small families. And now, what I remember, we were talking about this, a friend reminded me. He said that, remember 𝗬𝗵𝗲 used to own a poultry. 𝗬𝗵𝗲, as the position he held, he had a poultry. He was selling chickens. He was selling chickens. You see that again, the notion that people that live in 𝗬𝗧 or had property in 𝗬𝗧 were wealthy, or the country was discriminated. No. Yes, what the economic policy of PPP failed to do was decentralize. But what they had right there was social mobility program. People that were at different levels, assistant secretary, permanent secretary, deputy permanent secretaries, to different levels, to clerical jobs, were demarcated that land. And it took ages to build, because I was present. And some of these people started using it as a garden. They put fruit trees and something there. That's where we go and steal the fruit trees. Yes, as kids, it was part of a factor, because we used to go that area. It was like they claim our property. We used to go there to hunt. Just like villagers do. We take our dogs and hunt. Now they clear that land and they fence it, and most of it local fences, and they plant their fruit trees, from romance to different exotic trees we don't see, or some we even have in our houses. But it's not an adventure going to your father's own property and take something. No. As kids, that's not. The haram was nice. we have to go there, jump into the fence, like to be chased. And this, again, this is how some of our people from Foni, you see, because of lack of opportunity in the Fonis and other areas, not only Fonis. This is the interesting thing. Because anybody now who do that, they say he's a Jola. No. We know Bambaras, we know Sierras, we know other people. Mandinka. But majority, obviously, were Jolas, would come and settle in those areas to look for this thing, and they don't have housing. Now, you remember, these places now, look, German and Latukunai, all those places were not populated. There were no houses built. Now, what they do is, civil servants will start their houses. It takes ages to build, because probably they rely on Padim and others. I'm not saying that they were not corrupt civil servants. Don't take me wrong. But I can tell you, most of the properties, I saw the properties stay there for 10 years, 15 years, before they got built. And again, remember that this person might have been deputy permanent secretary. By the time he's a permanent secretary, he traveled probably 6 times a month or 4 times a month. He get 500, whatever they used to be paid, 250 a day. Cement was 50 buduts, 75 buduts. Yes, I remember that. It's not a long time. And other people, these things, it took time. And remember again, some of these deputy permanent secretaries, these things, went to the international community. the AU and other UN systems, they went there, secondments, and they never came back even. Most of those properties, again, in this thing, and other people were left and went to the private sector, become lawyers, lawyer Silla, lawyer Antuman Gay. Others left these things, became business people. You see, Fayara was built in a different manner. It was not a government corruption of giving land to ministers or this. No. And I will tell you, for the First Republic, I can tell you it's the same ministers been recycled. Every cabinet was kind of the same ministers. If you have new ministers, it will be 2, 3. Because of the way to be a cabinet minister, you have to be a member of parliament. Now, members of parliament become, the incumbent become re-elected. The only time like MC Cham to the latter part lost a seat, then he cannot be in cabinet. But if he had won that seat, he would have been in cabinet. Then a space was created for someone else. This is how 𝗬𝗓𝗓𝗏 had the chance to come into parliament. And most of this cabinet position too was kind of 𝗍𝗏 was trying to kind of balance it based on regional and tribal this to have a little bit of mix in there. This is what's happening. Now, this Fayara was demarcated in this way. And that's how this is. But that when it comes to moving Fayara, and 𝗬𝗏 was the same thing. 𝗬𝗏 was part of this demarcation, as I said, the way Fayara was demarcated. Most of the people in 𝗬𝗏 again were government things, but some of the properties were sold to private owners and they rebuilt. But some of these people, factor two we have to remember is, these people, when they were given this property, they were like us. They're like people we try to empower now to say that teachers need houses. Some of them were teachers. Some of them are assistant secretaries. Some of them are secretaries. Some of them are something else. They need houses and they had houses. Yes, again, we have to see the gender thing. Most people going to school, most people going to government jobs were men. That's why most properties were owned, and that's this mindset that people think of men own compounds. Most of these things were men. And that's how Fayara happened, that's how 𝗬𝗏 happened. But then, we move on to, this become to the 1980s. You see, late 80s, population kind of grow a bit. Then with kind of a complacency, the PPP become complacent, corruption started to really be seen in many areas. That part of that small corruption, or what at that time big corruption, today we know is like a small corruption, but in those days like big, because people don't have much. It is some kind of a corruption happened. Then the 𝗏 coup take place. And when the 𝗏 coup take place, again I'll credit the PPP. They thought about to address some of these problems, the disgruntlement of society. Because now it was easy, they can do a little bit and people will be satisfied. But now we are having more, population is growing, we're having more people wanting to access jobs and do things. Now, or people in these areas, teachers and others, especially teachers, because from the teachers, if you understand the social political history of the Gambia in that area, teachers is different now. Teachers were the incubators of this socialist movement, where the distribution of wealth and, you know, anti-capitalist feelings were, Marxist, Leninist feelings were. That's where it was, teachers. Now, and most government was the main employer. Government was the main employer. But again, at the late 80s, what happens is tourism came in. Then you see the appreciations of properties in 𝗬𝗏. Other people. So in 𝗬𝗏, Dembo Boyang, I give you an example. Dembo Boyang had a property, not because of he's from Bakau, because he was agricultural supervisor, something like that, extension worker. Asan Diallo had a property, not because he was a minister. He was not a minister in the mid-70s. He was a graduate from school. He was a junior lawyer at the AG Chambers or whatever it is. Other people have property. They were not what they end up being. We have. I can give you many people around there who were allocated part of the agricultural thing, because as I said, it was agricultural where they do their projects. They demarcated that land and give it out. They used to grow mangoes and cashews and everything, experiment and everything around there. That's how it is. Now, what happened is, after everything happened, government took stock and realized some of this disgruntlement, to address it, they need what was the Social Security and Housing Finance Corporation. Housing was not accidental in that. Housing finance. This is how Social Security came in. Pensions, so that people can have something in time of retirement. I mean, that can be invested, so that it can yield, so that they can have something at the time of this thing, you know, to give hope to people. One. Two, housing, in order to help. Now, people were demarcated land, but they could not build. Now, to find them a kind of a way to enable them to own a property. The injury compensation component, that accidents happen at work. It's like an insurance now. You have accidents at work, you have something to fall back on. You'll be surprised, before then, in many areas, there's not like injury compensation. And I tell you, until 86, 87, when I joined the army, to 89, I think later, when I left, that's what the amendments were done. Even if you die as a soldier, your salary was stopped. That's what happened to our comrades. Your salary was stopped at that month. Now, if you have a wife and kids, you have nothing, because there's nothing in law that said that you need you need a compensation. You need it taken care of. But okay, at that time they thought about Social Security housing to do these things. That was in the 80s, going to the 90s. Again, we forget easy. 81, we have the Senegalese forces. You see, again, let's learn from this. Economic would not stay forever. We have the Senegalese forces and everything else, Senegambia Confederation. Yeah, complacency. The PPP just forgot that if people are disgruntled, it will come to a level, the only institution that is capable is the armed forces. They will come and dislodge you. Or people will rise up. A revolution will happen. Because what happened in 81 was not the armed forces, but it was a individual from whatever. There are lots of factors, but again, people, it was celebrated. I'll tell you, at the beginning it was celebrated before people know what it was. Now, in the, they forgot, because we have this guys, security guarantors, Senegal, there, they started to do their things. Again, the corruption, you see, this corruption, this big corruption that happened then, tainted everybody else. I'll tell you, let me give you an example in Fajara. You have Charles 𝗬𝗓, for example, I'm giving Charles 𝗬𝗓 as an example, who was not even government, whose wife was a head teacher. I know there's no allegation of and head teacher milking the system or anything else. She was respected, she did this thing, Charles 𝗬𝗓, this thing, had this thing here. You have someone called 𝗂𝗵𝗲 𝗣𝗿𝗍𝗶, big project, agricultural development project, 𝗬𝗓𝗍𝗶 project. You see, that's the evidence. Now, if you ask Ben, oh, where's the evidence he was corrupt? The lifestyle, the property. You see, this kind of things tainted everybody else in Fajara. That everybody in Fajara know. Musa Fall of Bata, an entrepreneur who started Bata, you know, the shoe, construct shoe, became Bata. I remember Musa Fall lives opposite 𝗂𝗵𝗲 𝗣𝗿𝗲. Musa Fall started his property. He did not finish it because the business broke. Because again, that was one thing about us Gambians. The minute we have little, we have to live big. He was the first Gambian eyewitness building a swimming pool in the late 70s. That we used to go in there, play, yeah, swimming pool, boy, build swimming pool. Because the only swimming pool we know then was probably in the hotel, somewhere. I can't remember which hotel, but the am swimming pool. Musa Fall. But 𝗂𝗵𝗲 𝗣𝗓𝗍𝗶 was big. Now, yeah, but no. few people in Fajara might have done that. We have the neighbors. As I said, 𝗵𝗲, who was a private entrepreneur, this thing. We know of the people that graduated, came back, who could have gone somewhere else, came to the degrees they have then. I mean, the quality of education they have, they could just stay away. But they came back to go for low government jobs. We expect to remunerate them. We expect to give them something to keep them competent. Not only that, but again, that competency and what they achieve would be social mobility, would help them to have disposable income, to spend in the market, to do this. Not only that, to even help their siblings to go to school, to do this, to pay for this, to other things. But again, what we realized that in Fajara, it was not one ethnic group, was not one region. It was depend on your achievements. We have people from the rural area, we have people from the Combos, we have people from Banjul areas that live there because they were educated. They achieved something. They were in government. They were given so much. These people, if we don't give them something to hold on to, they might be enticed to go for the international jobs. Again, this is what the fact is. It's not, send papa yi am kër Fajara, ñu send yaay am kër Fajara, ñu judu Fajara, ñu send nijaay. That's a lie. That's prejudice. And some people using this are doing it in support of this government. And I'm going to give you the difference of then and now. This happened. I'm late for work, but this program is so important, I have to complete it. I have to move a little bit faster. But again, PPP forgot after 81, corruption started to happen. Now, some corruption at GPMB, Kaba Jalos and others, and we see the evidence again. That's where people started to see story buildings. You know, most of Fajara was bungalows. Most of Fajara was even sloop. I'll tell you, it's just that because they're sophisticated, they keep their lawns and gardens. This thing, they keep their fences. You think they're big, there's a big house in there. They were not. Most of it was bungalow. Even Dr. Peters and others, they developed it later. And these people were private people. It was just kept clean, organized, and so on. Then we have, obviously, the fallback from GPMB, customs, a custom officer, someone would join customs 3-4 months. Now the economy started to expand. And that effect, people started to, complacency, political patronage, the commercial bank, Gambia Commercial Bank, the patrons of PPP, that's where the corruption went on. And obviously, these people, some of these people started to buy the properties given to certain civil servants who could not develop it more, or property has appreciated and they see it, let's sell, take this and build somewhere else. Or take this and spend our families to educate themselves or do something, or cut some of this, because some of the land were big. That's how some criminals came to own properties in Fajara. Yes, there's corruption, but we should not paint the entire Fajara thing as a district. Entire Fajara project should be in fact celebrated that this is what we need. How to bring in Gambian, working for government, working for society, doing things that are not financially rewarded, to have an incentive to do their job properly. Doctors to able to have a house. Teachers, these things, school, development to happen. It went on. Now, at that time, we have what? Social Security started, they have. Again, I think part of it was a grant. That's how the family Dennis, this thing. Again, this was part of government resource mobilization. They started to look at Norway, Denmark, and others. Their traditional was UK and others because of the colonial mindset of development, and they didn't know that they were using us. They went to Nordic countries. That's where you see the Senegambia project, hotel, Kairaba Hotel, and others, because the Nordic countries were giving generously and doing something that was to our advantage, rather than be dependent on them. Now, the Bakote housing project came in. Go and look at Bakote. And look at the people who moved to Bakote. They are Christians, they are Muslims, they are women property owners. You see, again now, at this time, a lot of women came into the system. Educated and came into the system. The gender, you can see, gap started to move a bit. Ownership. Women, teachers, different servicemen, different people were allocated. I don't want to talk about the figure, but at the time, if people tell you how much that's how, but because most of it was a grant. You see, there was a seed money from the Danish to help Social Security to give affordable. This is important. I'll come back to that. That's how they own that 𝗍𝗂𝗧 housing estate. Most people today, and most of 𝗍𝗂𝗧 housing estate was just small houses being built. But today, those people, when they had it, they were teachers, they were schoolmasters, they were sergeant, or they were something held here or there, nurse or there. But remember, they have a family they brought up there. Those families travel to Europe or have bigger jobs, develop those properties today. Or do they themselves move from a sergeant to something else, move from a nurse to something else, move from a teacher to something else. Some of them became business people. And social mobility, again, 𝗍𝗂𝗧 housing estate became a success for what it is. But the corruption started to get in and hampering many things. We have you see, what was able to happen in 𝗍𝗂𝗧 could not happen in 𝗂𝗵𝗃, but still better. In 𝗂𝗵𝗃, they cannot build houses and give it to people. What they have to do is demarcate and give it to the Social Security people, contributors, or whatever you call them, land, and there was a kind of a mechanism put how to build it. But most people struggle. Some people had to sell. Some people had to this thing. Because of what? Now, again, because of the area, property have appreciated, land prices have gone up. Social Security cannot afford to buy the land or whatever, invest in it that way, and the same people, because still now these people are low income earners. They are government workers mostly. They cannot afford to. Now, if you give them a mortgage of millions, they cannot pay it. It's not, and financially, Social Security will bankrupt. But this is what they could do best. Was, okay, let's kind of give you access to land and this. And some people tried to build a little. Now they got better, or their families got better, and their kids, generation came and built. That's how 𝗂𝗵𝗃 happened. The generation of wealth and the vice of corruption in the mid-80s. And what that happened, what that created was land prices started to appreciate. That because wealth now is starting to start to happen, but the corruption. Now custom officers building 3 houses, 4 houses. Now, pressure being put in, and remember, we are still just around one area. We have not ventured into the Kotus. We have not ventured to the other areas. I come to that. When these things are there, you see, because we have not ventured the Gunjurs and others, because of roads were not there, it's still very rural. And now, because now it's everything around here, the corruption went on there. The prices started to appreciate that big. Fajara become unreachable. Other areas become unreachable. And still now, there was no other mechanism because of decentralization did not happen. Decentralization does not only mean between rural and urban, but decentralization is about creating a chain even within the urban. Within the urban, there were not many. They tried. They tried to create something like called 𝗍𝗵𝗲, the business in to help Gambians to be supported, advised to build businesses, to be entrepreneurs. Again, commercial bank failed. If commercial bank did not fail, commercial bank would have provided the finances needed. You see, that's the social mobility for Gambians to access those finances and build businesses. You see, PPP have those things right, but the corruption, again, lack of accountability make these things fail. Patrons of political parties, and these patrons keep us divided by going to tribe and regional issues, whilst few of them milking the coffers. It's still happening. Now, what they did there, these things become a factor now. Now, these people who have access, now that's the effect of 𝗍𝗵𝗃 and sons. 𝗍𝗵𝗃, because of virtue of their family, 𝗍𝗵𝗲 𝗍𝗵𝗲 and Jawara and others, nominated, whatever you call it, and make wealthy from people's coffers, from commercial bank, and given a contract of cleansing service, privatization. Now, anybody else that, again, 𝗍𝗵𝗃 and others, people like him, tainted the entire generation of people that work hard and live in, and now 𝗂𝗵𝗃 came up and others. Everywhere else that own houses, the poor people or the people down there will look at them as they are all the same. They all stole the money. Again, this has become a factor. Now, we move on there. We see the development started in around Stadium, Kotu, Kololi, and others. What led to this is this factor of the 𝗂𝗵𝗲 hotel and hotels that were expanding, and land become village things, and the road networks extended and got better. As I said, the roads stopped at Kotu. Now Kololi was not paid for this, but because of 𝗂𝗵𝗲 and Kairaba and others, those roads built and speculation started. People started to go and grab land, and this Kololi was a village, and around the spoiled areas become to move on. That's how we move on. Then we move on. I'm going to a little bit faster now. Then and now we move on to the and what happened again now? You see, the minute they opened up the land, the speculators went on to buy land, started to buy land which is still accessible around Kololi. This thing came again in the late 80s. Late 80s, we have to started to see snippets of diaspora money coming from Germany. And go and find out many people that came from Germany those days buy property in 𝗂𝗵𝗲 area, land around Kololi area, and other things. But again, because of the corruption that started from certain areas, those corrupt people to custom officers and others that have access to money started to buy land, a lot of land. But again, demarcations were done and certain government. But again, now the corruption to get into the demarcation areas. Now they started to do deals, giving siblings of, and some people who are privileged could have different, many lands in different names. They are using their siblings' names and so on. Corruption went on. Yeah, late 80s, this is the time to alienate. But something that happened is land banking. Now, some of these privileged people, what they did was, they started to do land banking in Bushwood area. You see, Saladi and others. There were many civil servants or people who had privilege who could clear a land and put a local fence and put two wells and kind of pretend or try to do this. Most of them went and did land banking. And they went to alcalos. Alcalos want anybody to come in. And they give them land, garden. And now this is very fashionable. But then it was few people who clue up to it or have the means and time to say that, look, hence we have got to Kololi now. Bushwood will be next. Other areas will be next. They started to go for gardens. That was a strategy called land banking. They bank on those land speculation. The land will appreciate in a time. Road development, infrastructure development will come in. Population growth will come in. They have the means they do. But you know, if you are struggling to feed yourself, they give you land even you don't go for it. You still stay in your rented property, but only if you think that much, yes, I'm in my rented, I'm struggling, but hence the alcalo can give me land free, I'll find a way to hold on to that land. And some people did that, and today that's why they can live in Bushwood areas that you see. But if you look at their development, you know that these people are just struggling. They did the right thing. They acquired the land at the right time. But some people too had land at Bushwood areas, and they sold. They sold because of the appreciation. Now they had land 100,000. Man bubako am alkali bi dama ko jox li la ko jox. Now 100,000 they went and sold. That land now is $1 million. It's millions, actually millions. That happened. Now again, this is what happened. There was corruption and others. Land banking happened and it went on. And Kotu and Kololi, Bushwood and others went on. But then the 𝗂𝗵𝗲 factor came in 1994 when the Combo Coastal Road was built. But before that, because of the speculation, because actually before 𝗂𝗵𝗲 came in, there was speculation already the road was going to be built. The time of the PPP. Now everything, those projects, roads project was there. But 𝗂𝗵𝗲 came, it was his time. And he put the energy there because that he needed that to prove something. At least that's what he did. And that's how that coastal road came in. And boom, it opened up the market. But another factor was the Brufut tough construction, and another factor was money from the diaspora. After 1994, a wave of Gambians left. Now, a wave of Gambians that left actually changed a lot of a mindset of Gambians that they found in the diaspora. I can tell you that many Gambians that were in the diaspora well before 94 started to think of property back home because of the wave of new Gambians starting to try to think of building properties in the Gambia. That wave. In 1992, as I can remember, 1992 was when the Central Bank of the Gambia started to, in fact, take projections or measure the impact of the diaspora money. And that was caused when there was a shortage of US dollars, but they have surplus of Dutch mark because of the Dutch mark coming from Germany into the Gambia. I remember that incident. Now by 1994, and the amount of Gambians going back and the mindset of Gambians changing of doing something, and there are people on the ground or people telling them, hey, utal land, Brufut legi fi, Brufut legi, and that speculation went on. But again, that speculation went on. What supported that speculation too was the tough project. Look, there's more controversy around the tough project and so on, communities and others, where I cannot get into that. That's another program. We will do that. I will bring those programs. But that tough project, we're listening, the AU hosting, the Sheraton hotels open up something else. That's where the Brufut Heights became fashionable and others. Now, traditionally, what happens, this other side of the road or certain measurement of the road was called the TDA, Tourist Development Area. And again, this was the physical planning during the Jawara government that had this zoning, demarcations, zoning, Kanifing estate, Kanifing, industrial area, zoning, industrial areas, and everything was done right. But complacency become deregulating issues and opening the floodgates, and corruption went on. And that was just energized with Jammeh wanting to own anything and open up this Pandora box of land. Then what happened during the Jammeh factor, we have this estate started to come in, the tough estate. If you look at it, there's a tough estate around Yunum, the Yunum Road. It was never controversial. We have to study that. We might have to get tough on a program and ask why that's not a controversial. But Brufut became controversial with the Brufut community and others. We discussed that. But that was the first tough estate. I don't know the place again, but it's by Yundum. That road there, that estate there was first. But later we have the tough estate came in with the Chocho, with the Brufut people, and it brought up land prices going up and so on. The Jammeh factor on land grabbing started, you see, again, from even the stadium area. He went back to the stadium area, demarcating land using the land ministry. That's the first time that 𝗑𝗵𝗲 was the lands minister being sacked because of conflicting interests in that demarcation of this thing, because that land was reserved land. That land was reserved land for industrial development and other institutional development. But they started to demarcate and just madness. Corruption went on to allocating to residents, and God knows, they no zoning anymore. Yes, few schools came up and other things, but the land was reserved for other things. Now we see what happened with that. But it went on with then this thing happened. That's what brought about the land commission, because of all the chocho and everything else, and Jammeh interest in holding onto some of this land or getting to this land or confiscating certain land. He went and formed the Mahoney Commission. You see, that's why I am never in favor of commissions. It's a way of doing things illegally. No, it's not legal. Yes, they use a legal instrument to go fish around and do things. The commission came out, because what you realize is when commissions are done, I'm not blaming the commissioners. They can come with the best report. But what happened is, what the report is done with, that's always our problem. Even in UK, America, commissions, that's the problem. Is the executive using a loophole Because of investigation could be done, taken to the courts. No, now we are giving powers to the executive to try to kind of take the powers of the judiciary, which there's a separation, and there's a reason for a separation. Accountability. Now we, okay, commission, do a commission, let me bring the report, let me do a white paper. And through the white paper, I can mess things up the way I want it. Now, it's difficult for the average person to go through the judiciary to get things overturned or do things. People that have means might try that, get injunctions and other things. You cannot fight government, people will give up. And people might lose careers, people may be tainted, people can lose properties and everything else. J·AMMeh went for the land commission. That's the Mohani land commission. The same land commission this government used to steal the land will explain that. Now, most of these disputes or whatever it is was centered. The land commission scope and whatever was depend on what J·AMMeh wanted. You see, commissions again is about that. It's the scope. They go by what they tell to investigate this, investigate. They go on that, but not to look at things properly and bring out the solutions. Now they did that, and J·AMMeh had the powers now confiscate and redistribute. Distribute means owning what I want and giving to my patrons. And this happened, that what led us to this. You see, the area given to these ministers, the other area, what J·AMMeh have demarcated that and give it to land. People who saw the map. Land was given to their ministers from Sirawalindau, that crop of ministers, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 and others. Those crop of ministers, many of them, or all of them, had land given to them. Now, for what reason? Most of these people have land. They have this thing. It was not about social mobility. These people were already social mobile. They were already there. They were paid per diems. They had everything. They were paid per diems. They travel often. They have land all over the place. No, this was prime land. This was land costing millions already. This is not about. If government was to use this land, was to see how they can accumulate wealth from it and to redistribute in a way. Either to use the land for the national purpose, or if they have been selling the land, take the money for the NHS, for the health living, for schools, for communities, for whatever it is. That's the way. Not to choose Gambians to give it to them. That was wrong. J·AMMeh did that. Now, people saying that it happened in Jawara time, I tell you, this is what is happening, had happened in Jawara time. My perspective, I understand. And let's have that debate another time. But have a look at that. And what J·AMMeh came, started to blow the land and change things with this commission. They took the land and gave it to ministers. Land was not choosing henchmen, generals, choosing henchmen and ministers. That was a mechanism for him to control the country. It was not given to ordinary soldiers, sergeants, corporals, just as we saw in the Jawara times, in the Fajara area, Fajara South, sergeants, inspectors, and other police officers. No, henchmen, his henchmen, people that enforcers were given land in these prime areas, which was costing millions already. That was what they did. But let's move on. Time is running out. Now we come to the area of the borough government. The borough government, why are we holding them accountable here? And the main crux of things here is the mandate. Everything that happened, the wrongs of the Jawara, led us to the J·AMMeh, and now we want to address the wrongs of the Jawara and the J·AMMeh in this era. Reset the buttons. That's the mandate borough have. Not to nobody sensible, nobody realist, right, should compare. So, yeah, because it happened before, so what? Then we're going to say it happened before, so what? No, progressive people will say everything that happened before, we had to draw the line and stop it here and move forward and do it right. That's why we have the borough government, the mandate, reforms, land reforms and everything else. Now, what has happened? We have land is problems. We know. We have seen the conflicts in the latter part of J·AMMeh's government. We have seen the conflict in Burfoot. We have seen the conflict in Katong. We have seen the conflict in Gunju. We have seen conflict everywhere. We have seen conflict between families. We have seen conflict between individuals and alcalos, individuals having conflict because of alcalo corruption and other corruptions. We have seen everything. We have seen how 𝗬𝗵𝗲 just took over land anywhere he wants, prime land, with his patrons and Amadou Sambas and everybody else did. This is what we were against. That's why you cannot justify what will happen based on it happened before. These things. And it's a lie if anybody come to say that this is how Fajaro was demarcated, this is 𝗕. That's a bloody lie. This is prejudice. It's an ignorance for some. It's a prejudice for some. And it's a lie for others that knew the fact and just want to support this government or just want to be prejudiced against people, hardworking people. There's nothing wrong to being born and brought up in Fajara as is everywhere else. Does not mean that every parent in Fajara was corrupt or anything. They work hard. And most of these people are the foundations of our country and our government. Because they could have bolted and go and work somewhere else. I respect people that sacrifice. Just as I respect the people right now in the Gambia that could have nurses, doctors and others could have just come to the West here and stay. A courage that we don't have. Me, I did not choose because I am prioritizing my family. Oh, I want my family to have the best. Yes, it's selfish. That's why the little I can do, I am doing here. But those people on the ground, I take my hat off to them. People that are on the ground that have the means to come to where I am or other places, go to the Arab countries, be doctors, nurses, everywhere else, they choose Gambia. Some of the graduates that could have moved somewhere else, they choose Gambia. These were the same people in Fajara, 𝗕, they are Gambians. Some of them, yes, after they become international, they become other positions. But when they were demarcated, they were just like any ordinary Gambian, doing things, living in government quarters, teachers' quarters, living in other things, and they develop themselves. Let's move from that prejudice. Let's tell the facts. Yes, corruption happened, and I point out where the corruption came about. When Abu Dentin and others started building story buildings, 2, 3 Abu Dentin at the same time, we know where the money came from. Because we know the project he was responsible of. That's why when you ask for where's the evidence of a 𝗓𝗓, we know the salary, we know the allowances. That's why when Barrow started it, we said 𝗬𝗓, because we know the salary, we know the allowances. Now, this government had a mandate, that mandate to reform, to try to settle these problems, community problems, land communities, between communities. You see, we have to, government, that's its responsibility. You see, when things started to move on, I think that certain part, even Jawara government could have gone further and braver to bring about better legislation, things of land governance in the combos. But they took from where the colonial left and just kind of slowly, when people were moving faster than them. But Yahya Jammeh, we all know, he disregarded everything else. The little that was good, he just molded it up and do what has. But that's why we said we should have. This government has not then done anything apart from taking the opportunity. What have left by default, they just took it and doing worse than Jammeh. We have seen from all the things that have happened when they came in. In Gunjur, Bullfoot, Faraba, what happened in Faraba? A commission on nonsense again. Commission. They did not resolve it. Because of what? They don't want to resolve it. Because they are corrupt, they are greedy, and with their patrons, they want the system to be like that, so that they can grab more land. And this is what we're witnessing now. It's not only government, privileged people, this cabal, all of them. Some of them are lawyers, some of them are this. Now, communities that these things, and again, that's why I said we discuss this another time. We cannot expect communities to say that we are the owner of this land, and another community was there for 100 years to 60 years. You said they don't have right to land or access to land, but that can only be done by law. We cannot allow customary law just to be the law when things get to a certain level. You have to move to laws that every Gambian would have to abide by. Yes, we have to respect communities. We have to respect customary cultures, laws, and everything. But it has to go by the constitution, have to go through the law of the country. That's the way we can take care of conflict. and avoid conflict. But these people don't want that, they continue. And we see what they did, starting with the Janneh Commission, with their patrons. The commission again, they did the commission, what did they do? They took properties that Jammeh took from people and communities or whatever, and they share it among themselves. That's what they do. They're sharing them among themselves. Just the example of ministers being allocated, though that land was confiscated. But did we see this government bring about a mechanism to try to address the dispute between people, dispute between communities, dispute between landowners and non-landowners, whatever it you call them? No. They are not interested because they are looters. They don't want laws that will enforce. They don't want mechanisms that will stop them. They want to be multi-wealthy. The properties of Barrow, I cannot count them. I'll tell you, I cannot count them. There are so many. Every day, some they try to cover them. The First Lady properties. You see the prime property they're taking from behind the stadium. Now he's going to build a complex there. And the land, some of the properties he bought from private owners, and some of the properties taken, the properties in Tangier and everywhere else. And these are only what they have in the country. Not talking about what they are buying in UK now. Yes, they are buying properties in UK now. They are buying properties everywhere else, Senegal and everywhere else. But we are talking about the land in the Gambia. But Musa Dramé and his cabal. Now, everybody will take those differently, but just to show just what they're doing. It's not right. Now, the ministers, people like Musa Dramé and their patrons, business people, Barrow, Ahmad Bass, tourism development areas, given to the Iranian businessman, given to Hadim Gai, given to the other factor. The other factor, I know Taf will come to say that he's buying these properties. Yes, he's buying these properties from communities. That's why again communities cannot turn around always to blame. We have to take responsibility for those communities selling the land. They sell the land to Taf. But again, Taf, again, I said leadership always have to be proactive. It's not sustainable. Buying land from communities to build very expensive estates that Gambian cannot use, it's going to destabilize the country. Because of these speculations, because of this money laundering going on in that country, the amount of money laundering going in the Gambia, because of the corruption, amount of money involved in corruption, Port Authority, millions going out. That's why you see junior officers buying big properties, GRA millions, everywhere else millions, the hospitals millions. Look at the audit reports. That's why the speculation. It's not sustainable. Then TAF cannot only justify that because I am buying my land, I am building it. No. There should be a responsible as a leader to make sure this is not sustainable. How can we bring stakeholders together and look at a sustainable way? How can government be in the mix here? As I said, the handicap for social security is the same thing. Social security cannot buy land and build on it. Because of it will have to cost the same price TAF is selling it. And how many Gambians will buy it? Probably some in the diaspora would struggle even to buy it for that cost. Others would see no sense in buying it. But again, doesn't mean that people won't buy it, but what's the economic reality? I mean, this is going to be destabilizing the economy. It's not going to work. It's not going to work. We cannot have gated properties everywhere. Something would give. Social unrest will happen. This is what I'm telling you. And the corruption continues, then other institutions like the army and others might get into things. That's what happens in countries where there's no social mobility. That's why I said PPP have the social mobility right. What they fail to have is the value chain or the decentralization, not only in the between urban and rural, but even within urban areas. It was not enough. Not enough fuel put in the engine to chuck it out, to chuck out citizens to be stakeholders in owning properties and in investments and other things. And that's again, people will have little, foreigners will come in, British will come with £10,000 and own a big fund. How many Gambians can do that? All these things have to be understood. And the latest allocations. Let's come to the latest allocations. Time is just running out. The latest allocations to ministers and families, they try to justify. That's why it's not justifiable. This is, again, prime land. Prime land. This is not part of, like that, things have been addressed. That's why if holistically they have to look into things and do the resolve the land disputes and everything else, legislations or whatever it is, bring and demarcations and say this is the way it's going to be. This is the criteria. Everybody knows the criteria, and then we can see that a nurse is eligible, a doctor is eligible, a soldier is eligible, a police officer is eligible, a teacher is eligible, a headmaster is eligible, other private governments will be eligible in this way. Yes, because people that serve government have to be given some kind of incentive to continue to serve government, because the salaries are not lucrative. But again, the people in the other corporate world who are Gambians, they have to be given access to be part of that, the mix. They have not done that. What they did is they took prime land, just as 𝗬𝗵𝗲 did. That was costing millions. Now these are costing from 10 million. People are saying 10 million, 5 million and going on. Now, to lie about it, to say that some ministers don't have place to live. How many Gambians don't have place to live? Why ministers should be given priority? Should ministers, if it is place to live, should ministers be given priority? What about teachers? What about doctors? What about nurses? What about police officers? What we accused for corruption every day standing in these things. Do you know how much rent costs? And how much these people earn? If ministers choose to spend their money other way, I know they travel, I know they got allowance, they got other things. Let them try and do what hard-working people are doing. Let them go and find land when they can, where can this. And I think it's a lie. There's no minister in the cabinet that doesn't have land already. It's a bloody lie. They don't have nowhere to live. Where are they living now? Where are they living before they become ministers? Who? Either in the diaspora, and they had means then to own a land or do something. Or which minister? Which minister? In that list, tell me. Not 𝗬𝗏 He's not a minister, but why can't he have land? It's a lie. Not 𝗬𝗏 𝗍𝗶𝗰𝗲. Why can't he have land? It's a lie. He was living in the diaspora. Not even other people are not living in the diaspora, but they have land somewhere. To have that land, yes. Myself, I cannot have that land. I cannot have a big fund. 20 million, 10 million, 5 million. No. If I have the 5 million, I put it somewhere else. Because if I have this thing, I cannot build what they want us to build. I don't have that money. And few people in the diaspora have that money. Now that's a lie. That they don't have place to live. Two, it's not right to allocate them because of, what about 𝗬𝗵𝗲? 𝗧𝗵𝗵 𝗣𝗵𝗲 is a private lawyer. He is already wealthy from his job. But again, this is the 𝗧𝗵𝗵, part of a team with 𝗵𝗲 𝗣𝗂𝗍, who charged the state when they needed to work for the state $5 million to prosecute a case that after. Yeah, I know, and because of the controversy that happened, 𝗬𝗵𝗲 have rescued himself. But when the contract was given to 𝗬𝗵𝗲 and 𝗵𝗲 𝗣𝗂𝗍 by his own brother. Fii can do it. Fii can more nyama majang. We are not stupid. That's what's happened. They preferably give them the contract. Was it open forbidden? We have other lawyers. Probably other lawyers would have bid 2 million. Other lawyers would have bid 3 million and do a better job. I'm not saying that they're not good lawyers, but in this case, they are bad lawyers. But 5-6 years, the case is not resolved. And this is a private prosecution. And the state could have taken this case. It's a straightforward case. All they need to do was to go back on the investigations, redo it, make sure they build the case properly, and take it to the courts, and it's done. But because of the investigations not done right, selective justice is faulted. We know where the problems are. Now, how can you compensate this part? Do you know how many land he owned? I don't know, but I know he got few. He lives in prime locations. Why do we give 𝗬𝗵𝗲 a land? How can we justify that? How can we justify giving 𝗵𝗵𝗲 a land? Alkali Conte, because of his with the president, he has to have a land. Other ministers, for what? Because they don't have place. Or another excuse, they say because land was taken from some of them. Now they are compensated. What about other people land been taken from? What about the government? In fact, I tell you, I said that's why it all cannot be explained in this program. The government through 𝗧𝗵𝗲 𝗣𝗵𝗲, not only the government land that 𝗬𝗵𝗲 have confiscated, they distributed. Other land that 𝗬𝗵𝗲 confiscated from private individuals, they are distributing to themselves. And land that are not even been confiscated, they are taking it. These things will come out. Do you know the 𝗁𝗃𝗃 family? They have a land that they intended to build a school in Jawara days. Because of what happened when 𝗬𝗵𝗲 came in, they were in exile. They were paying everything on that land. Now they, in fact, starting to build a school and a health center for the memory of 𝗁𝗃𝗃. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 𝗣𝗵𝗲 is taking that land and giving it to his friend or cousin. Friend and his cousin. How can you justify that? A land owned by people, forcefully taken from this family. And if a prominent family like the 𝗍𝗍 family can be tramped on, what about other ordinary Gambians that we don't even know? Why did the government not build a mechanism that things will be resolved? But no, they pick how they want to do it. At the same time, the first lady, the ministers, and many people are going taking prime land everywhere else. Prime land everywhere else. Now, this is where these things are wrong. Now, how can you take millions, 5 million, 10 million, 15 million? How many ministers? 10 of them, or how many millions is that? And this land was taken from the community of 𝗵𝗏. And do you know there's a community land in 𝗵𝗏 that the 𝗵𝗏 people are trying to build a stadium? Not a stadium, something community, something project. I think there might be a stadium and other recreation. They don't have the money. They're struggling to put the money together. Why the government did not sell that land? You think the government sell that land and build the facility in 𝗵𝗏, Gambians will have a problem with that? No. And that land, in fact, was taken from the community of 𝗵𝗏. That's the right way to compensate the community of 𝗵𝗏. Because if you give it to the community, because I'll tell you what, again, as I said, the problem is not only other things, because within the communities today, because of the price of land, these blessings, where they are our ancestors, where we are accumulating people coming from different environments, settle in, and we live amicably. Now there's a tension within communities. Some people that see the prices of land now just abusing it. Because if that land was even relocated to the community, actually few people would have it. The community as 𝗵𝗏 it is, they will not benefit. But the best way we could have is sell the land to the highest bidders who can afford to develop and do it, and take the money and spend it in the community of 𝗵𝗏. The schools in 𝗵𝗏, hospitals in 𝗵𝗏, clinics in 𝗵𝗏. Why can the money be spent? That is millions. Millions. It will go a long way to do something. And that will bring a reconciliation factor. When we talk about reconciliation, these are the things we look at. Reconciliation, you want to bring criminals, because of those criminals are supporting you, enabling you, you're telling us reconciliation. No, this is the reconciliation we're talking about. Criminals need justice. And the victims need justice. Criminals, yes, they need justice. Probably that will help them, to rehabilitate themselves. Or to be rehabilitated. This is what the problem is. It's not. And I said it. I have to go now. I didn't want to stay this long, but took long. But if you just joined the program, please go and listen for the start. I talk about this prejudice. And if you were born in Fajara, wave the flag. If you have something to hide, hide that. But the people from Fajara were not criminals. Yes, there might be criminals among them, just as we have criminals in every community, but entire Fajara was a progressive social mobility. People in Cape Point, the same thing. I had prejudice against them before because of ignorance. I got educated. That's why I'm sharing. I am not from Fajara. My father owned land many places. Have never been demarcated a land. He bought a land. And most of the land was not even for profit. People know. People who know, know. People who know, know. We still, today, I'm not claiming of being a landowner because of those land where they end up, people know. But that's why I said I stand here. I have no conflict of interest about being a 𝗬𝗲 guy or these things or any person. But this is the fact. It was a social mobility. People who were, we have seen it, as I said, different sectors, police, army, in 𝗬𝗲 South was mainly dominated by servicemen, corporals and others. And that project started from what we had in Bakau, around the police station, where the 𝗬𝗲 family, the 𝗬𝗲 family, and others. Social mobility. They were sergeants. They were not commanders. Yeah, they ended up being commanders. Yeah, people in 𝗬𝗲 and K Point. Most of them were assistant secretaries, permanent secretary, deputy permanent, or registrars. Registrars. They had that land. The value. Look, it was then. Land was not that a big thing. People don't really want to live in 𝗬𝗲. People were kind of forced to move, or people who feel comfortable with that. But those people obviously end up in the international community, or they end up become permanent secretaries from registrar over the years. Those houses were not built in a year. What we have problem now is seeing people just join in government, acquire a land and build a story building. Sidi Njai just joined the borough government and built 2 mansions. That's the problem we have. How much does he earn? That's a problem. Not the 𝗬𝗲 people that took time, allowances, do extra job. Some of them became consultants while they working for government. Some of them become teachers. And when my friend told me that, and I now remember, because I didn't even know. You see, this is the prejudice. I know who the father was, because the father had a big name. I don't know who the mother was. The mother was selling food at the school. And I went to that school. I don't want to narrow it down for people to know who it is. I went for that school. And the mother have served me. But I don't know that was his mother. I wouldn't expect the father's wife was selling. Because, look, some of them I know. Some of them used to. People watching here know that part of my father and my extended family was business people. These people used, these so-called civil servants used to come and ask for credit. Credit on building materials. I have part of my family who are selling building credit. And they pay after their projection income coming to start to do something. They build it small. They ask for credit. Civil servants. They don't even, and some of them say, look, they didn't build mansions. What they built was bungalows. And the bungalows, what they had was palm runs. Palm runs was very cheap. 25 bottles old, so palm runs. I can remember, even remember up to 75 bottles. This is too expensive now, because then the combo is finished, almost getting finished. And this was the mature palm runs, not this one white one you see. Matured palm runs they put on corrugate. That's what they had. They just keep the properties nice, painted and so on. That's all they did. Then we cannot allow this prejudice to continue. And especially those people using it to support this government. You cannot take what had happened in the First Republic. Yes, they were corrupt people, and I named them. I have named some of them, in fact, not the 𝗬𝗍 the Seni Davos that bankrupt Jahali Pachas, this thing that the Accountant General Abudantins and others that did this, that, and we saw it. They got the land and they built it in a day. I mean, 2-story buildings at a time in the late 90s. Late 80s to early 90s. We see that. That's where you can tell corruption. Thank you very much, guys. This has been a long one. But as I said, we need to have this conversation. I mean, that's the only way we can cure our prejudice, by being educated. And we not allow some prejudice that is intentional. They are part of a mechanism. They are paid by this government and previous government to be agitators, to divide us, for us to be divided. But it's very wrong to accuse people something they are not, or to try to silence people something they are not. If you are born in 𝗬𝗲 and know your hands explain, say it, but proudly show your 𝗬𝗲 credentials or pipeline or where else. Just as if you have wealth and you write it well, if you want to show it off, show it off. It's the criminals we have problem with. and not, we cannot just blanketly use this that thing for accuse everyone for that. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you.